I'd like to use a bunch of the ideas that we've learned so far in the course to build this pretty slick search select component over here. So to start, I want to take this static template and just turn it into a basic functioning dynamic component. So right now, this list of thrash metal bands is completely static. So why don't we work on turning that into a dynamic list that we can iterate over to build up these options. So I'm going to go ahead and grab all these closing li tags here, and we'll use a little bit of text editor magic to grab this list of bands. Now let's head down to our data property here, and we'll just store these locally in an options key for now. So let's paste all these strings in, select them all, and wrap them with quotes, throw a comma at the end, fix our indentation, and then let's update the actual template to use this data. So let's get rid of all of these options except for the first one, and we'll just throw a v-for directive on this and make sure that we loop over all of the options in our options key. And let's make sure that we also add a key here, since that's the best practice. Since these are all just unique strings, it's fine for us to just use option here for now. Next, let's make sure that we actually replace anthrax here with the actual option that we want to show. So it looks like we're getting that list rendering now. If I remove one of these bands, we should see they get removed from the list. So it looks like everything's good to go. Next, why don't we take the currently selected band that we're seeing up here at the top of the component and make that dynamic as well. So right now it's just a static string. Let's make it based on some data. So why don't we add a value key here for the current value of this control, and let's just set it to a different band. Maybe we'll do destruction. And now we can head up to the top and we can just render out the current value here instead of that static string. And over in the browser, we can see that that has updated. Now underneath this span here, you can see I've got this commented out span. This is sort of the placeholder text that we want to show if someone hasn't chosen an option yet. So why don't we conditionally render this message based on whether or not the control has a value. So up here, let's only show this span if value does not triple equal null. Now down here, we'll just throw a v else on this one. And now we'll show that placeholder if there's no value. So if we head down and we change the value here to null instead of destruction, then we should see that that switches to the placeholder text. Nice. Okay, let's undo that change here to our actual data and think about what we should do next. Right now, this control is permanently open. That's probably not how we want it to work, so why don't we make this dynamic and have it only open when the user actually clicks the control. So to do that, we're going to need to keep track of the open or closed state of this control in our data section of the component. So why don't we add a property like isOpen, and we'll default it to false. And now if we head up here, we can say that we only want to show the search select drop-down section here if isOpen is set to true. So if we save this, it should disappear. Perfect. Next, let's get it to open again when we actually click this element. So right now we have this element as just a div over here, but for accessibility reasons, it's a good idea to make this a button, since it's actually going to behave like a button. When someone clicks it, something's going to happen. We also get a bunch of browser behavior for free when we use a real button element. So let's switch this from a div to a button. And we'll also give it a type of button so that it doesn't accidentally submit any forms. Great. Okay, now to open this control, we can just add a click handler to the button. And when someone clicks it, we could just say isOpen is now true, but there might be some other things that we need to do eventually when this control is opened. So it's probably a good idea to extract this out to a method. So let's create a method called open that we're going to call whenever someone clicks the button. So down here in the bottom of our component, let's add an open method. And for now, all we'll do is set isOpen to true whenever someone clicks it. Let's head over to the browser and refresh to make sure we don't actually have any errors and click it. Okay, so it opens. Perfect. Let's refresh again for a second. You can see right now, even when I have this button focused, it still looks like this element is focused. So I think we only want to apply this isActive styling when the control is open, not all the time. So let's conditionally add that using a class binding. So we'll use the object syntax here. So we'll say class equals, and then we'll throw in an object that has an isActive key that maps to whether or not the dropdown is open. And it looks like that did get rid of that focus ring. Now if we go ahead and click it and open it, we can see we do get that ring back, but if we refresh and we focus on the button, for example, this control doesn't look focused. So I think that's good. Okay, so right now we can open the control, but we can't actually go ahead and select a band to close the control. So why don't we work on getting that working? To do that, let's add a click handler to the LI here. So whenever someone clicks an option, we'll set that to the selected option. So let's just add a click handler under our key section here. And we'll just say on click, maybe what we want to do is select the current option. Let's head down to our method section and figure out how this is going to work. I think it's going to be pretty simple, right? So we'll have select takes an option. I think all we have to do is say this.value equals option. So we just update the value of the control to match whatever the user clicked. Let's save this and see what happens if we try and use the control now. So if I try to select, say, Exodus, it does update here, but the control stays open. So why don't we go ahead and close the control whenever someone makes a new selection. Just like we created a method for open, I think it's probably a good idea to create one for close. So why don't we just call close here, and we'll add a close method, and all it'll do for now is set this.isOpen to false. So now if we head back to the browser and open this control, you can see we can scroll through, select a band, maybe Slayer, and it does select that band and close the control. So we've taken what was just a static sort of mock-up of this component and turned it into a functioning dynamic version of that component, but we still have a lot of work to do, so let's keep iterating on this in the next lesson.